Welcome. My name is Dawn Hayes. I am excited to practice with you today. You'll find it helpful to have a blanket or a beach towel, something that you can add a little bit of slippery surface onto your mat with today and cushion for your knees. You might also find it helpful to have a block or two. If you have a yoga strap with a buckle, that could be useful. If you don't, you can use a block instead. You can start on your back, making your way onto your blanket with your knees bent and the soles of your feet onto the floor. Rest your hands on your torso. As you arrive, ask yourself the question, what moves me? As you repeat this quietly to yourself, you might begin by noticing what is moving in this moment. And as you're curious about what is moving, you might be curious about what is the spark or ignition of that movement. My intention today is to continue to explore this question as you move in your body and on your mat, but to allow the question, what moves me, to unfold in ways that are not limited to your time on your mat. As you consider what is the spark, the ignition of actions in your life, in your relationships, in your work. What moves you to speak and to say what it is that you feel and share with others? And how does clarity and understanding of what moves you help you in turn move through your world and the life that you lead? To begin your movements today, bring your arms out to the sides about shoulder height and walk your feet so they're about mat width apart. Inhale, tip both knees to right. Exhale, return to center. Inhale, tip both knees to left. Exhale, return to center. Do this a few times, like windshield wipers in slow motion, almost as if they're on the delay speed. And as you observe and feel what moves me, as you repeat that question to yourself silently, notice how what is moving now is a little bit more exaggerated than when you were lying relatively still a few moments ago. And notice how what moves has a pull or effect on areas that are all throughout your body. So as your thigh bones turn side to side, your shins and your feet tip with them. And you can feel the rocking across the sole of your foot, from outer edge to inner edge, and from inner edge to outer edge. You might also notice that your hips, waist, and ribs are moving. But if you look closer still, you'll feel your skull move a tiny bit, The way your arms connect to the floor will change as you move side to side. So a big movement in one part of your body can ignite or initiate a small movement somewhere else. Then next time your knees are in the center, pause there. Interlace your fingers behind the back of your head and slide upper back to the right. If you're on a sticky surface, this will be a little bit tricky, but do the best you can. Slide back to center and inhale, slide upper back the other direction. I think of this as being a bit like a hammerhead shark moving through water. With hands interlaced behind head, your knuckles will slide on whatever blanket or slippery surface you have below you. And your ribs will move a bit like a fish or a shark does in water, with a sense of that fluid wave side to side. Then next time you slide shoulders and head one side, tip knees opposite. So now we make the movements all throughout your body a little bit more exaggerated. And notice what moves you in this moment. It might be a combination of muscular action, pressure against the floor, the slipperiness of the blanket, and some sort of curiosity or imagination. Pretending like you're a sea anemone in the tide pool or a jellyfish moving in the waves. As you explore this movement side to side, notice if there's any change or impact on your breath. And how is your breath in some ways the spark of the movement? And in other ways, it's shaped by your movement. Then next time you're in the center, pause there. And with soles of your feet on the floor, you can keep your hands behind your head. Inhale, tilt your tailbone towards the earth and arc your ribs a bit towards the ceiling. Exhale, scoop your tailbone towards your knees to knit your ribs and low back more towards the earth. Inhale, tilt your tailbone in the floor and feel your back body gather to widen your front belly and ribs. Exhale, feel your front body gather to engage there and widen the back a little bit. And do this a few times. We call this spinal undulation. Initially, head will remain on the floor. The next time you exhale, lift your head and shoulders like you're going to curl up, old-fashioned sit-up style movement. Inhale, lower elbows to the earth, tilt tailbone, feel ribs arc in a mini back bend. Exhale, scoop and lift, tailbone towards knees, head and elbows come off the earth. Inhale, tailbone into the earth, elbows press down, but ribs and low back arc a little. So you do this a couple times. Feel the pulse and notice what moves you. Next time you lift, add rotation, both elbows towards one of your hips. Inhale back to center. And exhale, rotate other direction. And do that a few times. Inviting breath and movement with pulse, wave, and spiral. Then next time you lift, swoosh across to the other side and then lower down towards the center. Lift to the side you came down, swoosh to the other side, lower to the center. This is going to enhance your exhalation a little bit, giving you a little bit more of a squeeze and turn of your diaphragm as you press the air out. As you do one or two more of these, notice how maybe your pace has gotten a little quicker in the lifting part of things, especially as you swish across. And then as you finish the one you're on, extend your arms, extend your legs, and drop your bones for a few moments. As you return to the question, what moves me? As you repeat that silently to yourself. What sorts of feelings, thoughts, images come in response to this question? In some ways, I hesitate to say this question has an answer. In many ways, I feel it has a myriad of responses, all which could be an answer at certain times and in certain ways. When you're ready, bend your knees, bring the soles of your feet to the floor. Roll to one side, and we'll come into the table position. And you'll find it helpful to fold up your blanket and give yourself a little padding under your knees. And with hands on the floor, grip your fingers into the earth. Exhale, round chin to chest, feeling that back body move up towards the sky. Inhale, belly, heart towards the earth, but look up and pretend like your tailbone is a dog's tail, kind of wagging up towards the ceiling. Exhale, imagine you could tuck your tail between your legs as you scoop navel to spine, chin towards chest. As you do this a couple more times, it could feel really good for your body to go a little bit side to side, to do some circular movements, to move your hips back towards your heels, and to make this less linear and more organic. Those opening movements on the floor today were designed to be organic for your body to explore the pulse, the rhythm. And as we move into the yoga shapes, they can become more linear, but it can be helpful to invite a little bit of a swirl or organic pattern to them as well. When you're ready, with toes tucked under, shift your hips back towards your heels and push your hands out in front of you, almost as if your arms are already in downward facing dog. And as you grip your toes into the floor, look towards your fingertips as you slowly lift your knees, lift your hips, coming into downward facing dog. At the end of that lift, your eyes will look towards your feet. Feel free to bend one knee, press the heel down, and change sides as it feels good to you. You can also walk your hands out like a mountain lion or a tiger, pawing your mat. Checking in with a little bit of joint movement here, like a pulse, especially through knees and hips and ankles, but also through shoulders, elbows, and wrists. You can move your blanket off to the side and tiptoe your feet really slowly to meet your hands. If your steps are about the length of your big toe, you can experiment. Either heels lift really high or heels are rooted back behind you. At one point in your big toe length steps, do your hands need to come off the floor for you to continue walking forward? Some of that depends on, your hamstrings. Some of it depends on how long your arms are compared to how long your legs are. So feel into what your body gives you space for. With your knees slightly bent, take your hands to your hips and squeeze the elbows towards one another. Press into your feet, lift up towards the sky. Inhale, sweep your arms up for the ceiling. Exhale, dive forward, hinging from your hips. Inhale, lift your torso halfway. And exhale, downward facing dog. Inhale, plank position. Exhale, downward facing dog. Repeat this a couple times. Inhale, plank. Exhale, downward facing dog. As you go back and forth a few times here, feeling into the pulse, the wave, and imagine you're riding on the question, what moves me? That question, that inquiry travels with you. It leads you in your practice. Then next time you're in the plank, hold there. As you press your hands down, try to pull your hands towards your feet, and at the same time, attempt to pull your feet towards your hands. As you hold that pulling action of hands and feet towards one another, can you feel into what the response is as you attempt movement unsuccessfully? For me, I feel a strong engagement in the abdominal rib diaphragm area. When you're ready, knees to floor or straight legs. Slow motion chaturanga for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale, cobra. Lift your chest. Exhale, downward facing dog. Inhale, plank position again. Your choice, straight legs or knees to the floor, chaturanga. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhale, cobra. Exhale, downward facing dog. Do that one more time on your own. Again, your choice. You can either have knees down or straight legs for the chaturanga, inviting yourself to go really slow. If you want to linger for another breath in your cobra, you're welcome to do so. If a different back bend is better, go ahead and do that instead. When you're ready, we'll meet in the downward facing dog. From your downward facing dog, lift your right leg up towards the ceiling for three-legged dog. Make a couple circles with your right foot and ankle. Exhale, step right foot forward between your hands. Grab your blanket and slide it as padding underneath your left knee. It could be helpful to have a block or two here. Inhale into low lunge, chest forward, feeling the root of your front heel. Exhale, shift your hips back for half splits, straightening your front leg. Inhale, low lunge. Exhale, half splits, straightening front leg. As you go back and forth between these two, hands on blocks or on the floor, could be useful for you. A way to make this a little bit more challenging for balance is to inhale, arms up by your ears when you're in the low lunge. Exhale, folding forward and either bringing hands to the earth or blocks or reach them up and back behind you with your front leg straight. Inhale back into the low lunge. Exhale, arms sweep behind you. By adding the arm movement in here, you bring a slightly different focus and attention to your breath. Because your arms help you to lift the musculature and bones of your top ribs and upper chest. When you inhale and when you exhale, that movement almost presses the ribs down and in to help the exhale. The next time you're in the low lunge, step back to downward facing dog. You can hold in down dog for another breath or move through the vinyasa, the chaturanga. I also like to mix up my vinyasa by doing any combination of stillness and movement that feels appropriate for that day. So table pose and the cat-cow again is an option. Sometimes child's pose, malasana. Child's pose or malasana feels better. Malasana being the squat. From your down dog, inhale, lift the left leg up towards the ceiling. Make a couple circles with your left ankle. Exhale, step forward, left foot between hands, right knee to floor. You can start with hands on blocks. Inhale, low lunge. Exhale, fold over your front leg. And try that a couple times. Inhale, low lunge. Exhale, half splits, folding over your front leg. Noticing this forward and backward flow. And connecting your movement to your breath and to the question, what moves me? At any time, add the arm movement to your leg flow. Observing where and how moving your arms changes what else moves. The next time you're in the low lunge, exhale to downward facing dog, moving your blanket off to the side if you haven't already. Inhale, some sort of vinyasa or stay where you are. So it could be the plank. Maybe you come into a Vashisthasana, the side plank. That's one of my favorite ways to work with arm and shoulder strength and do a little bit less chaturanga in the process. When you're ready, we'll meet in the downward facing dog. Inhale, heels lift, look forward. Exhale, step or hop, feet to meet hands. Inhale, lift halfway. Exhale, fold. Inhale, reach for the sky. Urdhva Hastasana. Exhale, arms by your sides. Place one hand on your heart and one hand on your belly and pause for a moment. As you repeat and listen to the question, what moves me? There might be a response from your heart rate, from your breath pattern, from deep in your tissues. From Tadasana, inhale, chair pose, Utkatasana. Exhale, return to standing, the Tadasana or mountain pose. Inhale, chair pose. Exhale, return to standing. Do this a few more times. You might imagine you're a California condor with a slow, sweeping reach of your wings. And as you experiment, arms can be out to the sides. You could also do arms out in front of you. That will feel a little different through your lungs, through the ribs. On your next round, twist to one side, bring one arm back, one arm forward until they meet overhead, and then descend them, turning back to center. Go the other direction. Feeling how a little spiral changes what moves you. Where do you feel naturally drawn to look with your eyes? How does it feel to look towards the front hand as it lifts? Towards the back hand as it lifts and lowers? What's different about those small nuances, those small movements? Next time you come into the chair, find your way into symmetry and hold it, lingering in the deep end of the knees, the rooting through your heels. Exhale, fold forward, Uttanasana. Inhale, lift halfway, lengthen forward. And exhale, downward facing dog. Optional vinyasa. Again, you could combine movement and stillness any way that works well for you. Perhaps holding plank pose for a couple breaths, or lowering into chaturanga and your back bend, or something else altogether. We'll meet in the downward facing dog. Inhale, lift your right leg up towards the ceiling. Exhale, bend your right knee, step forward for high lunge. As you lift into high lunge, find that Sweep up with your fingers and lower through your front thigh. Exhale, straighten your front leg, lower your arms by your sides as your torso remains upright. Inhale, bend your front knee, lift your arms up by your ears. Exhale, straighten your front leg, lower your arms by your sides. You did the same pattern in the chair pose. So notice how it feels to combine breath and movement in the high lunge with the sweeping of your arms. Like you did in the chair pose, you can experiment with arms moving forward or out to the sides. It will challenge your balance a bit to twist your torso, but you're welcome to do that. And feel into how the eyes moving through space to follow your spine gives you a little different experience here. The next time you come into the chair or to the high lunge, pause there, turn to the center. Exhale, downward facing dog. Your choice, vinyasa or any sort of reset that works well. As you pause in your down dog, preparing for second side, ask yourself what moves you. Inhale, lift your left leg up, three-legged dog. Exhale, step forward, high lunge. Lift your torso, arms by your ears. As you bend deeply into that front leg, use your breath. Exhale, straighten your front leg, lower arms down. Inhale, bend your front knee, lift arms up. Exhale, straighten front leg, arms lower down. Inhale, bend your knee, arms lift up. As you keep flowing on your breath here, you'll find that the front leg straightening makes your balance quite tricky. And if you're on carpet that's pretty squishy, you get added challenge. It's like extra credit. A hard surface in general will make it a little easier to balance. As you experiment with different arm movements, at any time you can work with a twisting movement here. That could, again, make the balance more difficult, so feel free to skip that if it feels better for you. We'll do one more bend, finding your way back to the neutral or symmetrical torso for high lunge. And exhale, downward facing dog. Optional vinyasa or any reset position. As you find yourself pausing and listening, what moves you? How does movement help you connect? How does stillness help you connect? And what initiates or inspires movement and stillness? We'll meet in downward facing dog. Inhale, heels lift, look forward. Exhale, step or hop feet to meet hands. Inhale, lift halfway. Exhale, fold, chin to chest. Push through your feet, reach for the sky. Urdhva Hastasana. Exhale, arms by your sides. Samastitihi. Rest one hand on heart area, one hand on torso, near your diaphragm or belly. And ask yourself, what moves me? As you come back to feeling, sensing movement, stillness, what responses does this experience present? Open your eyes. Inhale, chair pose. With your knees bent, fold forward. So you're still in chair pose with your legs, but your torso comes towards the earth or towards your legs. Take your hands behind your ankles and imagine you're trying to pull the skin of your Achilles up towards your knees. And as you do that, can you send the thigh bones up towards the ceiling, like you're trying to fold yourself into a jackknife shape? Now your legs will stay bent here most likely, but depending on how you're feeling today and how things are responding here, sometimes it feels good to straighten the legs. So you check that out. But as you pull up with the hands, notice that sense of length or traction, potentially through the back body, potentially through the front body. When you're ready, tippy fingers on the floor. Inhale, lift halfway, lengthen forward. And exhale, step back to downward facing dog, planting hands. Inhale into plank. And pause here, pushing hands down. Try to drag your hands and feet towards one another once again. Can you hold this plank pose, gripping your toes into the floor like you're trying to make a fist with your feet? Gripping your hands into the floor like you're trying to claw like a tiger into the mat. Exhale, downward facing dog. Inhale, plank again. This time as you push into the floor, exhale into upward facing dog. Clawing hands, clawing feet. Inhale in the upward facing dog, keeping that strength. Exhale, downward facing dog. Inhale, back to plank. Exhale, grip as you slowly bring your hips towards your wrist for upward facing dog. Exhale, back to downward facing dog. We'll do that one more time. I kind of messed up the breath on that last one. So inhale to plank, push your hands into the floor. Exhale to upward facing dog. Inhale in your upward facing dog. Now exhale back to down dog. Inhale, right leg lifts for the ceiling, three-legged dog. Exhale, step forward for warrior two. Grounding back heel, lift your torso, sweep up. From your warrior two, look at your back hand. Is it possible to keep your eyes softly on your hand as you tip front elbow to your thigh? The back hand will sweep gradually up towards the ceiling and overhead as your eyes look at the center of your palm until you're in the side angle position. Now, could you keep your eyes on that upper hand and reverse that movement back into warrior two? Try that one or two more times, unless this feels like you're going to get dizzy here. Noticing how your eyes tracking on something that's moving is really tricky for your balance, in a way that looking at something unmoving around you is not. As you do this one last time, we'll linger in the side angle. If it's comfortable for your neck, you can continue to look at that top hand. If it's not, look forward or down towards the floor. If it feels good to you to take your front hand lower onto a block or onto your shin, feel free to do so. Exhale, look to your left hand and sweep to down dog following the hand. From your down dog, optional vinyasa or any reset, action, or posture. From downward facing dog, be curious what moves you, particularly as your eyes will follow your hand on this side. Inhale, left leg lifts for the sky, three-legged dog. Exhale, warrior two. Step foot forward, windmill your torso and your arms up. Gaze to the center of your right palm like it's a bindi, the red dot that represents the sacred universe in the yoga tradition. As you come into the side angle, you're looking at that center palm and reverse that back to the warrior two. Legs will stay stable if you do this, as you do this 1 or 2 more times. Noticing how eyes, breath, and movement initiate a certain experience here that's unique. Is it easier or harder for you to balance on this side? And next time you're in the side angle, pause there for a couple breaths. Looking wherever it feels best for you. What moves you? Looking back to the palm, track it with your eyes to downward facing dog. From your down dog, optional vinyasa or any combination of stillness and movement, honoring breath, checking in with what you're feeling, what you're noticing. From your downward facing dog, lift heels, look forward. Exhale, step or hop feet to meet hands. Inhale, lift halfway. Exhale, fold, chin to chest. Push through your feet, inhale, reach for the sky. Urdhva Hastasana. Exhale, arms by your sides. Samastitihi. Take a breath for nothing. Potentially hands on torso to feel with palms what's happening under your skin. What moves you? Open your eyes. So the next piece I'd like to demo briefly. If you have done this with me before, you're welcome to get going with it as I walk through it. You start with feet wide. We'll fold into Prasarita Padottanasana. And then the feet are going to transition and turn. So your right toes will turn out like warrior two legs. You could use a block here because you're going to lift from this position into the half moon. Hand on the floor will keep you a little lower to the earth, but it's generally more demanding on the standing leg hip. Then after you come through that first side, you ninja your way across to the second side and lift. And then you find yourself moving back and forth between those two with your chest and your eyes staying low to the floor as the leg alternatively lifts and lowers. Now you get to go at your own pace. And if that means you go to one side and you hold there for 5 breaths, you do it that way instead. When you're ready, hands to hips, fold forward. If you're already going, no big deal. Just know what side you started with. Turn your right toes out, left toes in. Inhale, lift into half moon pose, either with block under your hand or tippy fingers on floor. If possible, turn your chest more towards the ceiling, away from your standing foot. Exhale, bend your front knee, step your back foot to the floor. Knees will bend as you tiptoe your fingers across. Turn your left toes out. Left hand either on the block or tippy fingers on the floor to lift into the half moon. As you find that stability, turn your chest up towards the sky a little bit more. Then bend your front leg, step back foot to floor, tiptoe your way across like a ninja. Escaping notice, staying low to the earth. And then go at your own pace, finding your way, moving on your feet. Your eyes will track across the earth. You can continue to look down the whole time, which makes the balance feel a little bit more stable. Or you can challenge by turning to the side or even looking upward. As you find your way in and out of the shape of this pattern, is one side a little easier for you than the other side? What happens as you start to get tired? Can you feel how muscle fatigue impacts your feelings of balance, of stability? The next time you finish one on your left leg, pause with your feet wide and fold to the center between your legs, returning to the Prasarita Padottanasana, the wide spread leg posture. You can nod your head yes here a few times. Shake your head no a few times. Hands can be anywhere it's comfortable for you. Inviting connection to your feet and your legs. As you take another cycle or two of breath, ask yourself what moves you. Inhale, lift halfway, look forward. Bend your knees, take your hands to your hips, and come all the way upright. From here, go ahead and turn so your feet will stay kind of wide apart-ish. Turn your right toes out. Now take your left foot and turn your left hip and your left toes towards the right foot. And at the same time, walk your feet. So instead of narrow like a tightrope, they get wide. So heading towards the edges of your mat, but not on the edges of your mat. Take your right hand to your right hip, left arm reaches up for revolved triangle. On exhale, reach forward with your left arm. Go long as you tip towards the earth with your torso. Bring a block underneath your left shoulder and twist your right shoulder over your left. Now in this position, it tends to be where we back bend here because that's a little bit easier. So if it's possible, pretend like you're doing the old-fashioned sit-up style movement we explored on your back earlier, and track your left hand and the block either closer to your right foot or to the pinky edge of your right foot if that feels good. Staying higher up will give you more capacity to go across the midline. So feel free to raise up your block or take hand towards your knee or shin. If you are using the shin, make sure that you're strongly pressing the calf towards your hand so the back of your leg stays really dynamic. Optional, you can keep your right hand on your hip, which helps open that front right shoulder as if you're trying to pull the elbow towards the floor behind you. Or if you want to go for the reach of the arm, you can do that potentially looking towards your top palm, as if you could turn your left ribs towards your right palm. Exhale, de-rotate, look to the floor. Push into your front foot, grab your block, inhale, lift your torso. Now spin your feet, right toes in, left toes out, left toes all the way to the other end of your mat, and walk your right foot over to the right so you're going back to that hip distance apart setup. Right arm reaches for the sky, left hand to your left hip. Dive forward, lengthening the front of your spine and the back of your spine equally. Take right hand to the block and start to turn through the torso. As you turn through the torso, imagine you're going to do that sit-up twist like you did at the beginning. You can move your block to the inner edge of your front foot to narrow the stance a bit, challenging your balance and encouraging the torso to go more across the midline. So it's less of a back bend and more wide in the kidney area. Hand on hip for that left hand, squeeze the elbow back behind you to turn the chest and open the left shoulder. Optional, lift your top arm up towards the sky. It's harder for me to feel the twist here, so lifting the hand up does not feel nearly as connected as it did on the other side for me. So I oftentimes find hand on hip is more of a twist and more what the focus of this posture is. As you take one last full breath here, come back to what moves you, what inspires you. And then you can leave your block behind, lift up and turn until feet are parallel. From there, bend your knees like you're riding on a horse. You can keep the feet parallel to one another. This one is a little different setup. It's almost as if you're vertical with the torso, head above your pelvis, and you're finding that deep bend in your knees. If I step this way, I think you can see me better. Good, so finding as much vertical here as you can. And for me, that means my quads are doing the work. Then straighten your legs, turn your toes out a little and your heels in a little, so slightly externally rotated. Now tip your shoulders forward and set your butt back. So if I give the side view of this one, it's more like chair pose. And this feels really different for me in my legs and the hips than the other one does. When you're ready, push into both legs, straighten up. Turning to the front of your mat, step into your right foot, bend your left knee, and reach your left hand for your left foot. Now, most likely this is a quadricep experience. As much as you can, bring your knees almost touching and invite your left heel to move towards your left buttock. But notice how there's a likelihood this is becoming a back bend in the ribs and the diaphragm area. Can you draw your front ribs in so it's less back bend? And how does that change what's happening in your legs? Switch sides. Left foot to floor. Bend right knee, reach hand to foot. Is it possible to bring knees near one another? Chances are that tips the pelvis with it. So if you bring, and the ribs, so if you bring the ribs down and the front hip bones up, you'll get a little bit of abdominal support, but then your hip will have to do different work where your thigh bone meets the hip socket. Let go of that foot there. So for this next one, I really love using my bookshelf. So if you have a table or a chair or something you want to use, take your right foot in front. We're going to do like a Natrajasana. If you lean forward to have support with the right forearm on the chair, you're going to find it's like coming forward into a bow pose like you would do on your belly. Take your left hand to your left foot and then pull the foot back as you pull the hand in forward and turn your chest towards your front forearm, allowing this to become a back bend as it feels good to you. Changing sides. Use the support if you want. You can always do this free balance. As you take right hand to right foot, push the foot back, pull the hand forward, and invite that sense of length through your right quadricep, through the sole of your left foot. And that rooting happens. Do one more time on each side, noticing your breath, your movement, remembering back to that low lunge at the beginning where you lengthened your hamstring, that's happening on the front leg, where you lengthened your quadricep. Last side, so last one, best one. As you find that sense of push-pull, notice what happens here. And then releasing the foot down. Coming back to the top of your mat, heels a little in, toes a little out. Slowly squat your way to the earth for Malasana. Now the translation of Malasana is garland. Kind of like the mala beads, the prayer beads that you sometimes see. And so as you find yourself curling inward, you might imagine are starting to wrap like a garland towards your leg. Allow this to, that feels good. And that your tail is hanging, your tailbone is down like the garland beads. And slowly take a seat on the earth using your hands as it's helpful. In super slow motion, roll to the earth. If you have a strap, have it within hand's reach. As you come to the floor, if you have your strap, make a loop out of it so you can buckle it. If you don't, no big deal. If instead of a strap you have a block, you could do the block between your inner thighs. When you belt your strap around the thighs, it's kind of a third of the length of the thighs away from the knees. Whereas if you're using your block, it'll be kind of in that same spot, but between your knees. So either do strap or block, whatever you have. As you push into your feet, if you're using the strap, try to bust your strap wide like it's a rubber band. This is actually really awesome to do with a TheraBand. And so if you have those like TheraLoops from physical therapy, you could use those instead of a yoga belt. As you push into your feet, as you bust out into the belt, lift your hips up off the earth. If it feels good, you can tuck your shoulders underneath you. Continue that sense of rooting through the feet and busting your thighs wide into the belt. Now, if you have the block, you would squeeze the block instead. It's a slightly different effect in the legs, but still gives you some feedback. As you take another breath or two here, what does it feel like to have the feedback of your prop today? What moves you here? Is there an evenness in the movement? Is there an equity in the movement? Or is something working harder or doing more for you? When you're ready, lower back to the earth. Pause. Take a couple seconds. If you have the strap on the block, you can set it to the side, removing your prop. With arms out to the sides and your feet almost touching, knees almost touching, do a few rounds of the windshield wipers with your legs near one another. This reminds me a bit of skiing, which I haven't done since I was in junior high, but the inner and outer edge of the foot carve like you would into the snow. Your legs move a bit from side to side. And there's a twisting and a lengthening through your ribs and your side waist. Returning to the question, what moves me? And asking yourself that question. Listening for the response. Then next time you come to the center, walk your feet so they're about mat width apart. Tip both knees to the side. So whichever side you've traveled to, you'll notice that one leg is turning in towards the center. Keep that leg where it is. The leg that's turning out to the side, you have the option of lifting that foot up and hooking it onto the outer opposite thigh. So you're adding weight to the leg that's internally rotating and traveling inward. If that feels like too much for your knee, please don't do that. When I first learned this, it was really painful on my knee, but eventually it started to change. Unhook the foot, switch to the other side, starting again with feet about mat width apart so there's lots of room. Notice the leg that's tipping in towards the other leg. Keep that one as it is and take the other foot that's tipping away and hook it onto that thigh. As you feel that turning inward, there's that gentle sweep of the thigh, of the waist. Notice how adding weight feels for your body. If there's any pain, please unhook. When you're ready, unhook ankle from thigh, take your feet to the floor. And as we began today, do a couple rounds of the spinal undulation. Inhale, tilt your tailbone into the floor. Exhale, scoop your tailbone towards your knees. And inhale, tailbone into earth, feeling ribs arc. Exhale, tailbone towards knees, feeling your front body press towards the earth and your back body root into the floor. And do that a couple more times. If there's any achiness in your low back today, doing the sit-up style movement of this can help to bring a little stability. And some days that's really helpful for me. As you finish this wave-like pattern, doing as many as is helpful for you, slowly find your way into Shavasana. Shavasana can be done lying on your back with legs and arms extended. It could also be done on your side, on your belly, seated. If you like, you could do legs up the wall, giving yourself some time for an inversion this morning, or whenever you happen to be arranging in space to give yourself the most ease. As you invite presence and attention to scan your current experience, repeat the question to yourself: what moves me? listening for the response to your inquiry as you wiggle your fingers and your toes, as you roll your ankles and your wrists. You can expand your body wide and long, reaching out. You can draw your body in tightly towards your center, bringing knees up. Roll to one side and slowly lift yourself up to seated. As you come to sit here, you can do cross-legged or whatever works for you. And rest one hand on heart and one hand on belly diaphragm area. And as you turn inward, as you repeat the question, what moves me? I invite you to take this question with you into your relationships, into your work, as you walk by the ocean, as you listen to the birds near your home. And the purpose of this question is not to find the mechanics of movement, not the how necessarily, but more the why. Why do you move? What does that movement look like in your life? And how does it impact your local community and our global community? And palms together in front of your heart. Make a bow forward with reverence towards what moves you, even as it changes, even as your understanding of it clarifies. And thank you so much for joining practice today. Such a pleasure to practice with you.